Whew. Yan na mga kameta. Kamusta kayo dyan? Sabaw na talaga ako, to be honest. Kakatapos lang natin itong mahabang paper. Kakatapos lang natin ng isang mahabang paper sa Thailand at kakatapos lang natin isang pang mahabang paper dati. Kaya medyo sabaw tayo. But I'll try to give you at least, wala na, nabulol na. At least an overview, no? Ng mga upcoming elections in the coming days. So over the weekend, mga kameta, magkakaroon tayo ng mga big-time elections. Arguably, the two most consequential elections of 2023. We're looking at elections in two countries, Turkey, and Thailand, no? At itong dalawang bansa na yan ay interesting because they're both important in their own ways, in their own region. But because they're also very similar to the Philippines, no? May sarili din silang version ng mga tatay, no? Yun isa, Tatay Thaksin at saka si Tatay alam niyo na yan. So, pag-usapan natin ng konti yan because I'm thinking about doing a proper analysis of each of these countries in the coming days as I also write on them separately and analyze them in a less vlogger way, in a more serious way, no? So, medyo sorry, sabaw tayo, kaya I'm just gonna keep this short. Now, one reason why si Tatay Digong ay never special or surprising sa akin is because for a very long time, mga kameta, I've been analyzing the rise of two strongmen populists in the two extreme sides or two sides of Asia, no? One was Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who rose to power actually in the 1990s, and by the mid-2000s was already the Prime Minister of Turkey, and then over the past decade, he also managed to make himself the President of Turkey, through his very important AK Party, Justice and Development Party, or AKP. But someone else that actually I felt is even more familiar to us as Filipinos is Thaksin Shinawatra. And Thaksin Shinawatra is an interesting figure because he's oligarch and at the same time strongman populist, and then at some points he's also kind of a so may Arab, may Villar, may Binay, may Tatay Digong. There are all of those elements rolled into one as far as Thaksin is concerned. Very interesting figure. So someone who's entrepreneur, very successful entrepreneur. So there's an aspect of, say, Manny V when he ran for elections back in 2010, and then there's the aspect of kind of a man of the people, populist. So there's kind of an Arab, Binay aspect to him, but he was also a strongman populist. Especially we'll discuss his drug war, which make him, in my opinion, very very similar to Tatay Digong, no? In fact, it's the opposite way because Tatay Digong became Tatay Digong as we know him, the kind of president of the Philippines, a consequential figure, way after these two other gentlemen, Erdogan and Thaksin, were already well entrenched in the politics of their countries, no? Now, similar tayong lahat because actually my term for all our countries is what I call emerging market democracies, no? We are all countries that have had experienced relatively above average growth rates in recent memory, and also we have had relatively competitive elections in recent memory. So there's a democratic mandate that goes with rapid economic growth. But in all of our countries, we also see really the retreat or assault on liberal democracy, and also a big element of democracy fatigue. In fact, in all three countries, we also see middle class, the middle class more and more sympathetic to more authoritarian or strongman leaders or illiberal form of politics because, especially this is the case in Thailand and increasingly we also see in the Philippines, there's a fascination with kind of decisive strongmen authoritarian means precisely because there is a disaffection with business as usual politics, no? Pag-usapan natin yan very shortly because I'll have to make a special vlog on this, mga kameta. This is very very interesting. Pag-usapan natin yan. Wait, I'm just trying to bring out yung. So for a very long time, mga kameta, I've been writing on the rise of this strongman populists in what I call emerging market populist nations, no? In fact, I lost count, but there were at least 3 or 4 academic papers that I wrote nung bago pa lang si Paulong Digong, no? So for instance, you can look at this: Ascent of Strong Asian Strongman, Emerging Market Populism. and revolt against liberal globalization, at saka itong isa pa, penal populism in major markets with Cambridge University Press. So these are a number of articles I've had, mga kameta, na sinulat natin. So ito yung mga yan na makikita nyo, mga kameta. Lawas ko lang. So ito, so for instance, here in this article, actually it's a book chapter, Ascent of Asian Strongman, Emerging Market Populism, the Revolt Against. So here, dinidiscuss ko lahat yan. So you'll see I discuss India, Indonesia, Turkey, Thailand, of course, is very important because Thaksin Shinawatra also had a lot to say and a lot to gain during the Asian financial crisis in terms of his, not only his political career, but some would also say his businesses. No, again, we need a different podcast on that, or proper discussion on that, mga kameta. And then, of course, speaking of the emerging market democracies term, this was a work I did for Cambridge University Press not long ago when I look at the advent of penal populism. Now, penal populism, I think, is far more relevant in the case of Thailand in comparison to the Philippines than Turkey. So I think Turkey has a far more humane approach to dealing with the drug problem than the Philippines. No, even though Turkey has been a transit for, if I'm not mistaken, heroin, no, from Afghanistan and from the east towards Europe, at least based on some of the studies and all. But Turkey never adopted the kind of brutal, extrajudicial killing-driven approach to drugs. But we saw that in Thailand, which I'll discuss very shortly. So ito yung mga works natin throughout the year. So hindi lang tayo nagpapakyut ngayon, na hindi lang yung ngayon lang na feel ko na pag-usapan ito. No. I've been writing on these things from a scholarly standpoint for quite some time. And personally, I've been fascinated with the rise of these figures for quite some time. Fascinated not in terms of a fanboy way, but fascinated with how fragile democracies are, and fascinated with how people seem to just fall on, atavistic instincts whenever there's any inkling of uncertainty. Now, and fascinated also by the fact of how similar our countries are actually. These different countries I'm discussing. Now, ibang usapan na si Modi or Jokowi, we need to have a different conversation on that. Modi itself, India itself, is another completely different topic. It's a huge topic I want to approach. Now, speaking of Thaksin, for instance, the reason why I said he's very familiar to us Filipinos, unfortunately, is that his war on drugs, which allegedly also claimed thousands of lives, is something that is eerily familiar if you look at the Tatay version of war on drugs. In fact, one would suspect that Tatay's approach to war on drugs may have been inspired by the Thaksin approach to war on drugs. So this is an article by Bangkok Post a decade ago, which talked about, almost exactly a decade ago, which talked about Thaksin's war on drugs as a crime against humanity. And the term of crimes against humanity should be very familiar to us because that's also one of the cases that was being considered against the former president in the Philippines as far as the International Criminal Court is concerned. Now, I'm not sure Thaksin was brought to the ICC or there's an ICC case against him. I don't think so. But if you talk to people who already are very familiar with Thai politics and what Thaksin was doing in terms of dealing with the war on drugs, there's really an eerie level of familiarity there and echoes there. Now, with Erdogan, it's quite interesting because when Erdogan naman also has should have some familiarity to us because similar to Tatay Digong, his rise to the pinnacle of power was because of his I want to say perceived because this is debatable, perceived success as a local government official, particularly when he was the mayor of Istanbul. Similar to Tatay Digong, when Erdogan was in power, he dealt with what we can call low-hanging fruits. For instance, cleaning up the drainage system or something like that, or sewage system in Istanbul, or making sure medyo mas maayos yung yung kalakaran pagdating sa processing of small and medium enterprises, or for instance, mas effective yung public transportation system. But it's not like Erdogan was super transformational leader, but he did the basics, things that his former, more liberal-leaning predecessors in Istanbul were not doing. And then from there, he built a platform and made it to the next level. Now, what's fascinating, mga kamet, I forgot the Turkish way of saying it, but when he was running for the top office, and these were very contentious time, we'll discuss Turkey separately, or Turkey separately. But speaking of Turkey, when Erdogan was running for office, actually, one of his slogans was, "He's one of us." No? Now, as you know, si Erdogan comes from the rough neighborhood, parang something like Tondo of Istanbul. And he kind of run against the so-called white Turks. Ito yung mga westernized, cosmopolitan, sometimes literally more white-looking Turks in Istanbul, no? Western-looking, EU-looking, etc. And the way he rallied support for himself, especially among the middle classes and the masses in Turkey, and the so-called there's a term for the new conservative middle class that was behind him. Anatolian tigers. All right, so ito yung mga small and medium enterprises. A lot of them later on will scale up. A lot of our Zara, a lot of basic brands, textiles, a lot of electronics in Europe that are produced by the so-called Anatolian tiger businesses, no, which are really centered in the Anatolian regions, export-oriented manufacturing Anatolian regions of Turkey. We can talk about that more. Now, I'm discussing this a lot because actually I gave a book talk about Duterte in Istanbul a few years ago with folks at the Koç University, and we had many fascinating discussions, including also the troll culture that both sides share. No, and some of the academics I met there actually were also big victims of trolling, big time victims of trolling. So many interesting things. But yung he's one of us, very similar siya dun sa atin to pre. So I don't know kung may involvement ng Cambridge Analytica, baka yung Cambridge Analytica may natuto dun sa campaign ni Erdogan. I don't know. But let's see. That's a very interesting similarity I saw. Like, he's one of us, atin to pre, yung campaign ni Tatay, parang, very, very similar, no? Alright. Now, but as I say, when it comes to policy, I see far more similarity in terms of controversial policy when it comes, if you look at the THAKSIN war on drugs, no, which the Bangkok Post actually characterized as a crimes against humanity, because we're talking about thousands of lives potentially lost there. No, this is a very serious issue. Now, speaking of Thailand and Turkey, of course, in both countries, we have a very, very competitive elections, but competitive in different ways. The one in Turkey is competitive in a more, let's say, conventional sense of the word. So in Turkey, it's really down to two figures, right? So you have Recep Tayyip Erdogan on one hand, but on the other hand, you have the leader of the opposition, no? I want to check the latest polls. Kasi actually, based on some polls, the opposition is ahead. And what's interesting here is that the opposition only fielded one primary candidate. So it's not like 5, 6, 7 running against BBM or something like that. No. There's really only one primary candidate that half a dozen opposition groups had to come together and to elect. And yun yung parati ko sinasabi, mga kameta. Yun yung kulang sa ating Pilipinas. Walang coalition-based politics. Tapos minsan makikita mo yung mga opposition, sabay-sabay sila tumatakbo, tapos against each other pa sila. So you have this even accusations of some of them being, like just, like a kunyari fake opposition, but actually a front or kind of helping the other one. So it's Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. Okay, I had to get the Turkish accent correctly. So Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. So this is from the CHP party. This is the party that kind of goes back to their to Atatürk, the kind of a founding father of Turkey. So Kılıçdaroğlu actually is leading some of the surveys. But it's very, very, very slight yung lead. Remember, Turkey is presidential parliamentary, so you have both parliamentary and you have presidential elections. And then the AK party is also facing quite an intense also challenge from the other side, mga kameta. So it's quite an interesting setup that we're seeing here, no? All right, so Kılıçdaroğlu, I think he was a former finance minister and also has a background in economics. He's kind of like their Lenny, right? Like economist background, super nice, right? Super offensive, sobrang mabait, tapos love, tingnan mo yan. In fact, remember, dun sa podcast natin, nakausap natin isa sa mga Lenin, yung mga insiders sa campaign Lenin. Diba? Sabi nila yung radical love, sa Turkey yan. Right? So, Kılıçdaroğlu, in many ways, kinda is that kind of love, 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 radical love candidate. Except, there's a big difference. There's a big difference. He's the candidate of united opposition, not just kakamping opposition or something like that. And that's why he has a very good chance of winning this. Not to mention, Erdogan has been in power for quite some time. He doesn't have the kind of vigor and momentum he has had. But there's still big questions about whether Erdogan is really defeatable, because there's also a question whether he'll accept any defeat down the road. And we saw time and again that Erdogan was able to mobilize his supporters. Again, we can have a separate vlog on this, but to cut the story short, Erdogan is a survival. Literally survival of a coup in 2016 that almost killed him, and also survival of multiple attempts by the military and the judiciary to go against him. The Ergenekon trial, the Supreme Court case against him, the so-called deep state. Mahabang usapan yan. But one reason why Turkey and Thailand are seen as political twins or siblings, they look very different as countries on the outside, but they're actually very similar. Both countries have a deep history of a politicized military and multiple coups. No? Thailand, Turkey. I'll just show this article that I think is very important. So, two very similar countries, two export-oriented countries, besieged or beleaguered liberal democracies, both in the shadow of very, very charismatic and controversial leaders. Both of them are heading into elections, no? Although Turkey kind of has more international profile nowadays because, Turkey is a big economy, $1 trillion economy, much bigger than Thailand's, twice bigger. And Erdogan has been kind of a fixture of global politics in ways that no contemporary type politician is. I mean, Prayut, who knows about Prayut here? And Prayut, as far as their current incumbent is concerned, I'm not sure he really played an important role, aside from being kind of a spoiler on dealing with the Myanmar issue, no? So ito yung article that I want you guys to read, so you can see where I'm coming from in terms of similarity between Thailand and Turkey. Very fascinating, very interesting. Now, in the case of Turkey, it's really head-to-head, and it's pretty clear in a sense of, we should really watch out which of the two will win. In the case of Thailand, it's much more complicated because you're talking about parliamentary elections, and in the case of Thailand, there are two ways to look at the elections. So on one hand, the elections is really about whether the Pheu Thai party, PTP, led by THAKSIN, from behind the scenes, through his daughter, is really the next one. So Thaksin Shinawatre's daughter is one of the top candidates to become the next prime minister, and the Pheu Thai party, the PTP party of THAKSIN, is in a good position to win close to half of the parliamentary seats up for grabs. So we're looking at around 500 seats up for grabs, if I'm not mistaken. Constituent seats and party seats, no? Medyo separately. Constituent seats, I think 400, party seats 100, something like that. Now, Pheu Thai party wants to win around 310 seats in order to have the secure majority to form the next government. But many are questioning whether the surveys are reliable, so baka we're looking at them winning something around 200, 250, etc. Tingnan natin. But the thing is, the Thai election is very fluid because there are many other players and potential kingmakers. One of the kingmakers, and this is where there is a more progressive and uplifting side to the Thai politics, is that there's a future, there's a Move Forward party. I think you named it a Future Forward party, which is led by a very charismatic young leader, no? Harvard-educated young guy, super progressive, really fighting for the middle class. Very interesting. Okay, to simplify it, they already have a Vico Soto in the race, right? They already have a Vico Soto in the race, okay? So there's like a Vico Soto and / Nancy Binay in the race, if I could put it that way, no? So yun yung young face race dyan sa elections. I doubt the Vico one has a chance here, but his party is looking to win around 100 seats. So if they manage to win between 80 to 100 seats, and they got a surge in the past week or so, then they could be a junior partner and potential kingmaker. Now, there are other kingmakers that I can discuss, the incumbent health minister and commerce minister. We can discuss that. People who are quite similar to Thaksin, controversial, entrepreneurial backgrounds, Thai also in terms of their ethnic background. We can discuss that more. But the question here is whether the party of Thaksin can get the 310 seats. And if they don't get that, with whom will they will they form a coalition? Will it be with the more progressive Move Forward Party, or will it be with the current Deputy Prime Minister who split from Prayut? Because the conservative side is also now divided, because the Deputy Prime Minister was temporarily the Prime Minister, kind of had his own ideas of his own. By the way, they're both generals. The current Prime Minister, and ex-generals, the current Prime Minister Prayut and the Deputy Prime Minister, both of them are former generals. Now they're also split. They're running against each other, and the current Deputy Prime Minister is open to form a coalition with Thaksin Shinawat's daughter, but the Vico guy here in this race from the Move Forward Party is not open to form a coalition with the other side, but is open to form a coalition with the Pheu Thai Party. So this coalition politics will be extremely important. Where is this going to go? And then the wild card also is, when will Thaksin return? Because Thaksin has already indicated he will return to the country, but that will create another chaos, because he's essentially persona non grata. And even if his daughter wins and Thaksin comes back and that threatens the military, etc., then again, they could go back to the cycle of coups and counter coups and all the instability. So that's why the race in Thailand is a little bit trickier. Now, siguro, if pa-safe sila Thaksin, they'll form a coalition with the current Deputy Prime Minister who comes from the conservative pro-military side. That's why some are saying this race is not really about democracy and autocracy. This race is really about whether the Thaksin can, maneuver the way back with the most pragmatic, reasonable, and some would even say opportunistic Game of Thrones kind of coalition. Or is Thaksin's daughter going to form a coalition with the future Forward Party and move in a more opposition, liberal, progressive direction? That's an interesting prospect, because I think if that coalition moves forward, it will have huge implications for Myanmar issue, because Thailand currently is much more sympathetic to Myanmar under its pro-military government than any other founding member of ASEAN. It will have implications also for US-China competition, because Prayut, although ruling over a US ally, is actually very close to China. It is also going to have implications for free trade, climate change, human rights issues, and Burmese exile. So maraming pwede natin pag-usapan here, mga kameta. Anyway, what I'm trying to do here is this. Sana may paki kayo sa mga elections na nangyari na mahalaga sa mundo. Hindi lang sa elections sa Pilipinas or elections lang sa Amerika. Wala namang elections sa China. You know what I'm saying? The reason why is because, the reason is simple. Hindi tayo Norway, hindi tayo France, hindi tayo, New Zealand. Alright? Wag tayong mag-ambisyon. Alright? We're not there yet. We're far from that. But if we properly analyze what's happening in Thailand and Turkey, which I think are far more similar to us, then we can figure out how to push the Philippines in the right direction. That's precisely what, this comparative perspective is precisely why I never had any problem with understanding where Duterte is coming from, where the Duterte regime could go, and why I was totally unsurprised when Marcos won. In fact, I called it in last year, the 2021 November, that Marcos is going to win it. Because what's happening in the Philippines is actually not very unique, mga kameta. We could even argue that what's happening in the Philippines is what was happening in Thailand, 15, 20 years ago, right? And I also see many parallels between Turkish politics and the Philippine politics, despite the super dissimilarities on many, many other levels. If you have an understanding and appreciation of structural analysis, if you have a basic appreciation of proper comparative analysis, mga kameta, you will not have a hard time understanding Philippine politics. You will not force yourself into illusions about Philippine politics. You will understand Philippine politics on its own term, precisely because the Philippine politics is very similar in many significant ways to what's happening in Indonesia, India, Turkey, Thailand, so on and so forth. All of us are emerging markets, and all of us have beleaguered democracies or semi-democracies. And this is something that we have to keep in mind. Kaya ang ginagawa ko yung mga kameta is because I want you guys to develop a sense of appreciation of comparative analysis. It's fun to watch American elections. It's fun to watch who's up, who's down, what's the latest with Trump, what's the latest with all of those shenanigans there in the US policy. Okay, fine. US is big and important, given na yan. But, to be honest, hindi masyadong relevant yung US sa atin because ang layo ng political system nila sa atin compared to, let's say, Thailand or Turkey, or I would even say Indonesia and India are even more comparatively sensible for any analysis of the Philippines. As one Yale political scientist said, if you know only one country, you know no country. It's only when you know multiple countries quite intimately, that's where you can make proper comparative analysis. And yun po yung kultura na kulang sa atin. ayoko maging mayabang, but to be honest, I saw very few so-called political analysts around who really bother to do proper political analysis. The few ones I know are very good friends of mine, and they tend to come from younger generation. Wait lang. Did I just forget the names? I'm a horrible person. He doesn't kaka-message ko lang sa kanya yan. Like, let me recommend some good friends who do very good Philippine-Thailand comparative analysis. Not Turkey. I do more of the Turkey myself. But, I mean, sige na, in the meantime, like, that's one thing I like about Lelo is because he bothers to also do comparative analysis and he's open to comparative analysis. But we have... Wait lang. Nasaan na? Oh my God. Sa dami mga Thai names na nasa mind ko, and I had to get the Kirish Duruglu, the Turkish, ano, medyo nawala yung mga Pinoy na makanan sa akin. Wait lang. Hindi, kasi kaibigan ko ito. I'll just send you their no, I have very good friends who are doing actually Thai-Philippine politics comparison. Please follow them on Twitter, and please, ayan na. Wala na talaga. No. I mean, na-interview pa nga natin yung iba eh. Yeah, so anyway, in the meantime, si Lelo yung muna isipin. No, but there are many younger Filipino political scientists who are doing a lot of comparative analysis. So I really, really appreciate that. And please lang, don't pull off this thing. You don't need to learn completely Turkish, Thai, or Arabic, whatever, to do some of this proper comparative analysis. To be honest, sometimes the problem with people who are too much specialists is that they lose perspective. They lack theoretical frameworks, no? Or they don't appreciate generalizations or reasonable sense of it. And they're so obsessed with their case study. That's why a lot of China experts, they get China so wrong. A lot of so-called China experts didn't see Xi Jinping coming, to be honest. I met a lot of them throughout the years. And the funny thing is the more generalists saw Xi Jinping coming, right? Those who don't have language proficiency expertise in China. Because when you're so invested in a case study, it tends to create blinders and biases. Now, when you're generalist, you look at common patterns, so it's easier for you to do forecasting. Now, hindi kayo naniwala sa akin, basahin niyo yung book na Super Forecasters. It's a fantastic book about how foxes will always beat the hedgehog. And as I said, we have to be a fox when we analyze things. We look at patterns, we look at similarities, and we don't get over-invested in one big theory or one country alone. All right? Yes. All right. Magsasorry na ako sa mga friends natin. No, this is just a this is the classic tip of the tongue phenomenon. There are a number of names on the tip of my tongue. I want to say like, but anyway, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. I know marami sa inyo sinasabi na paki ko sa mga ibang country na yan. Pilipinas lang isipin ko. But I'm telling you mga kameta, if you want to understand Philippines, you have to understand more than the Philippines alone. Or please lang, wag lang US. Malayo tayo sa US. All the Trump, tatay, all of that. Given na yan. But you know what I'm saying? US has institutions. We don't, in any real sense of the word. Thailand also doesn't have, when I say institution, I'm talking about rule of law. Thailand doesn't have that. Turkey doesn't have that. India doesn't have that. Indonesia doesn't have that, right? Complete rule of law. So, that's what I'm saying, mga kameta. There are countries that they are the countries that we have to pay more attention to. All right? And yes, they have Tatay-style politics, just like us. No, actually, one top person I'll suggest is Cleve Arguelles. Who I think his PhD right now is focused on Philippine-Thailand populism. Yeah, he's definitely one of the guys you guys have to watch. And I look forward to also interviewing him again. We had discussions before. So, there are a lot of comparativists coming out there. So, pay attention more to these people. Hindi yung mga alam lang nila yung mga barangay politics sa Pilipinas. Alam lang nila sinong kamarites ni tatay, sinong kaganyan ni BBM. Yung mga ganyan type analysts, they cannot see beyond 2 years. Right? They cannot even see what's happening. They only know what are continuities in the Philippines, but they cannot analyze disjunctures because they don't have much knowledge about comparative countries. Now, no offense to these people. These people are very useful, especially for me, because they help me to better understand the Philippines per se. But you cannot understand where Philippines is or is heading unless you understand similar countries to us. And to understand which countries are similar to us, you also have to have a sufficient level of basic knowledge of a wide range of countries all around the world. And for me, the best comparativist analyst na public thinker today, without the question, is Adam Tooze, right? He's another person I want you guys to follow, because he's a person who can talk about German politics, who can talk about Iranian politics, who can talk about Turkish politics. With, of course, he's more specialist on Germany, given yan, but he knows just enough about multiple countries to make reasonable comparison and all. All right? So these are people I really suggest for you guys to check. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much, guys. And talk to you soon.